Grosh? Mr. Grosh?
My name is Gary L. Grosh, and I am the Executive Director of the Alliance for Affordable Energy and the legal representative of Citizens for Safe Energy, the intervener in the docket CD 85-1 that is before us today. It is with profound disappointment that we find the City Council once again poised to rubber stamp a rate hike to pay for the Grand Gulf nuclear power plant. This same rubber stamp has fallen 4 years in a row. This increase, if approved, will be the 5th straight annual increase in electric bills. If approved, this rate hike will jack up bills in New Orleans 34% higher for residential customers than they were pre-Grand Gulf just 4 years ago. On average, each and every ratepayer in New Orleans is being charged a $20 Grand Gulf tax every month. If you pay more than the average bill, which is about $75 per month, then your Grand Gulf tax is greater than $20. And this is in one of the poorest cities in America. Probably 40 to 50% of this community, your constituents, live at or below the poverty level. Taking more money on this day from our people is a profound injustice. For small commercial customers, they are looking at 54% higher than just 4 years ago. Grand Gulf is murdering the heart and soul of New Orleans. Small businesses, restaurants, antique shops, mom and pop business establishments. Let's take a look and see what Grand Gulf is doing to our economy and to the perception of New Orleans' competitiveness. Electricity increases in New Orleans in 1987-1988, according to the Division of Business and Economic Research at the University of New Orleans, were 5 times the national average and far outstripped any southern city, our likely competitors. I have given you a copy of this study to be included as part of the record, and that study did not take into account last year's increase, nor obviously this pending increase. How many businesses fled or failed to come here because of the continuing threat of electricity price hikes? Probably more than you care to admit. How many people lost their homes because they could not pay their rent or house note and 34% higher electric bills? That number is probably in the hundreds, but no one really knows. This City Council should require a quarterly report on the number of people who have had their gas and electricity turned off. The truth is that you don't have any idea how many people have been turned off, nor do you really want to know. And we all know why, because your fear is that you might share part of the blame. So it is easier to see and hear nothing and pretend all is well. Let no one believe that NOPSI is without blame. NOPSI managers signed documents obligating ratepayers of New Orleans to 30% of one of the largest, most expensive nuclear power plants in the United States, the Grand Gulf Power Plant. Incredibly, the original Grand Gulf contract was a balloon note of unknown proportions that eventually exploded in their faces. Grand Gulf has been called spectacularly uneconomic by the federal courts, and it has been dubbed by Forbes magazine as one of the largest managerial disasters in American history. Its original price was supposed to be $600 million. Its actual completed price was nearly $4 billion. And when the City Council found out about Grand Gulf in 1980, you were lied to by Jim Kane, the present chairman of NOPSI, who said, if the ratepayers in New Orleans don't want to pay for Grand Gulf, no problem. We'll sell it to someone else. Well, they couldn't sell it, and now NOPSI's lawyers are saying in federal court that he didn't really mean it or know what he was talking about. Now, that I can believe. The plot then thickens. After the City Council found out about Grand Gulf, it attempted to wash its hands of the whole situation when it allowed NOPSI to underwrite the cost of a public referendum in 1981, which took away our right to regulate NOPSI's rates, an inherent power that we had exercised for over 60 years. This was probably the greatest act of political cowardice I have ever witnessed in my life. When the cost of Grand Gulf began skyrocketing and the Louisiana Public Service Commission began backing plans which penalized New Orleans ratepayers, 2 City Council members, Joe Geruso and Jim Singleton, courageously admitted their error and worked in the public interest to return regulation to New Orleans. Soon all City Council members supported returning regulation to New Orleans. This was despite the fact that NOPSI filed a $1 billion lawsuit against City Council members collectively and individually. On May the 5th, 1985, the power of regulation was returned to the city of New Orleans in a referendum campaign marked by scurrilous misinformation and false advertising by NOPSI and its agents. But was NOPSI's political campaign correct? Was the return of regulation nothing more than a precursor to the dreaded takeover? No way. In my opinion, city council members hoped against hope that utility rates and Grand Gulf costs could be held down through regulatory control alone. It was not to be and is not now. On a dollar-for-dollar basis, your minuscule imprudence disallowance actually passed through to ratepayers twice as much of NOPSI's mistakes related to Grand Gulf than it passed on to NOPSI. That's why the rate hikes are still coming hot and heavy every year, slightly damped to be sure, but faster than our competitor cities. And federal law is closing the door on the right of states to reduce federally regulated fiascos like Grand Gulf. The federal government has never found, nor has it ever even looked for, a single misspent dollar at any nuclear power plant. It is obvious that the only way out of this mess is not through regulation, now all but preempted by the federal government, but through the buyout clause in the franchise. You recognize this by continuing to look at the NOPSI buyout option. This is the option that your own task force on municipalization unanimously urged you to go forward with in 1985. Moreover, confidential legal opinions of NOPSI's own law firm, Monroe & Lemon, published by Gambit newspaper, said that the great bugaboo of buyout, federal law, was no obstacle in allowing New Orleans ratepayers to escape Grand Gulf costs in a buyout. In the meantime, NOPSI's dire threats of impending bankruptcy allowed it to stampede this council into a settlement wherein NOPSI gets 11 annual rate hikes until the buyout happens or a large imprudence order is issued. Because the actual imprudence order was so small, the increases are still continuing to happen. Therefore, until there is a buyout, the annual increases will continue. Indeed, we are looking here at the 5th one today. This begs the question, since the buyout is not likely to happen today, why are we here? What is our message? Is the council's excuse that they have no choice sufficient to avoid criticism? Absolutely not. Our message today is twofold. One is we are marking the failure of the council to act in the past year. We were here last year and the year before that and the year before that. Your continuing excuse for inaction has no merit. Every day of delay cost New Orleans $500,000 in Grand Gulf costs, over $15 million a month to pay for Grand Gulf. Indeed, the biggest chunk of dollars in the so-called friendly buyout price, $300 million, is to pay off the cost of delay, that is, the accrued Grand Gulf costs. Number two message is that we are demanding action in order to avoid a repeat performance next year. Have we made a decision to support this particular friendly buyout proposal that is presently on the table? We have not decided because not all the information is on the table, and we are analyzing what we have been given so far. Remember, this proposal was confected in nearly 2 years of closed-door negotiations. In any event, the criteria that we are using to analyze this plan are 3. Does it give the lowest possible rates? Will it provide the most reliable service? And does it maintain local control? Regardless of the answer on this particular proposal, the rate hikes have to stop by any means necessary before our economy is completely wrecked. New Orleans needs courageous leadership once again. One final note. Let's hear no more cowardly talk about a merger of NOPSI and LP&L. That option was resoundingly rejected by 63% of the electorate in 1985. New Orleans cannot depend on the kindness of strangers at the Louisiana Public Service Commission to treat us fairly, any more than we can depend on state legislatures to treat us fairly. If we have the power to control our destiny, let's use it wisely for the good of our people. Ultimately, we will save New Orleans ourselves or watch it drowned in the relentless tide of higher and higher Grand Gulf costs. Thank you.
There are questions. Councilman DeRusso has a question.
Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, this is the annual appearance that is made by Mr. Gresh. First of all, Mr. Gresh, I have a great deal of respect for you, and you have a right to your own thoughts. But I think when you tamper with the truth and you choose to go ahead and slant it in your way without telling the people all of the facts, it's absolutely totally ridiculous for Mr. Gresh. Wait, please, I didn't interrupt you.
You don't say anything.
Okay.
Am I saying anything?
Not yet, but I'm just trying to stop you from starting. Is that, Mr. Gresh, you have consistently said this every year. Now let's see if we can simply examine the facts and let you people decide. Not that we're going to force anything on you, as he's pretending that he's going to be the champion of the little people. He's going to fight for the causes, and the council is cowardly. Injustices have been reaped upon you. That's ridiculous. Don't you dare believe that. And we're here to go ahead and tell you what the facts are. The facts are, when this ordinance was written up, resolution in 1986, incidentally, one of the facts, Councilman Singleton and I, for your information, the first time voted against it, okay? The second time we did too, just along to refresh your memory along those lines. Mr. Gresh, is that when this resolution was drawn up in 1986, you've been in the forefront for the little guy. We have no problem with that. I do have a problem, though, with the distortion of what the facts are in the case. When this resolution was drawn up, read from the resolution. The council has conducted public hearings on the issue of permanent rate relief at which NOPSI, the council's consultants, and the public were afforded an opportunity to be heard. In addition, the council has considered written testimony submitted in advance of these hearings. Testimony was presented by NOPSI and the city's consultants. No testimony was submitted by a witness for the intervenor. Means that in '86, when the settlement arrangement was made, you are not so vocal and you're not so loud in saying that you champion the cause. We were forced into this. We didn't want to do it. And the idea is to leave people believe that it's pleasant for any of us up here to go ahead and endorse an increase, that we acquiescent to NOPSI or LP&L. You really can't mean that. I don't want a rate increase. I don't know anyone else up here that wants one. Why do you keep saying that to the people? If we don't grant the rate increase, you know full well there's going to be protracted litigation. We'll be in court tomorrow. What we're saying here, if we do what you want us to do, is tantamount to saying, look, we get sued. The difference between us, we're elected, we have to be responsible, and you aren't. You can afford to be reckless the way you are. Say this, do that. You don't say anything about the litigation we've been involved in for the past several years. You don't say anything about the lawsuits that we've won. You don't say anything about the money that we've saved the ratepayers in this city. You know the original allocation was 29.8%. That went down to 17. Suppose it had been. If we had not implemented this settlement plan, complete, absolute rate shock would have taken place in this city. Instead of doing it at 6% as it was originally set out, you'd have had 60%. You think we could have survived that? Absolutely not. We could not have done that. What was the agreement? Read that resolution, and you'll see is that they negotiated. And I won't read you the whole list about what they have there. But I think we got a fairly decent deal. If we hadn't done that, we would have been in federal court, and you know that. So, Gary, while I do respect you, I don't think it's fair on your part to characterize us as people that are being led down the primrose path. People telling us that we're doing something wrong, we're passing on this rate increase. You know that is not correct.
You're just waiting too long, Chief. No one thought a year or two. We're talking about 4
Just a
years
minute,
here,
Mr. Gresh.
5 years.
Mr. Gresh, when you addressed the council, we all were very courteous and allowed you to complete it. And we're going to request that you do the same for us. You certainly will have the opportunity to respond. So would you let the councilman continue until he finishes? Thank you.
I just want to read you a couple real important points that was put into the settlement ordinance or resolution that you have not mentioned. First of all, when we made it, the acceptance of the offer of settlement in no way affects legal rights of the city. That meant we continued to litigate, which we've done quite effectively. That's why it was dropped from 6% to 4.9 or 4.5, because there are 135 million disallowance. Well, you don't say anything about that. I think it's very important. Then the next thing, second, NOPSI stockholders will permanently absorb 51.2 million of Grand Gulf costs, previously unrecovered. Third, NOPSI will agree to phase-in costs of Grand Gulf 1. 4, NOPSI will be allowed to retain for 3.5 years the proceeds and so on. 5th, NOPSI will provide assistance in 6 areas designed to enhance the economic well-being of the city. Now, you said about the rates that we were paying, like as if we were paying, I'm not proud of the rates that we're paying, but actually the rates that we're paying, if you think that we're in bad shape, let me read you the latest report from New York City for 1,000 kilowatt hours, where they pay $122.33 a month. Or we can go to San Diego, where they pay $100.69. Or we can move around and go to Ohio, where they pay $98.73. Or you can go to Phoenix, where they pay $95.91. Or you want to go to Boston, a city that's comparable to us in size, has a heck of a lot more jobs and economic development there than we do, and they charge you $91.24 per month. Los Angeles, one of the best run, operated, locally, municipally owned utilities in the country, they pay $88 a month. And I could go on and on with the Sacramento, Tallahassee, Florida. They all pay more than we pay. So don't make it appear and look like as if we saddling the poor and we don't want to try to help them. We're breaking our neck to do our very level best to do that. So, Madam Chairman, I think I've made the point. And I just say to you, just don't be careless with the truth. I say to the people out there, don't you feel for one moment that we have not given you what we consider to be our blood, our guts, and our tears, that we've done it all to try to save you as much money as we possibly can. If there was any conceivable possible way that this city council could cut down the rates tomorrow, don't you know we would do that? So please, Gary, don't do that to us. We don't deserve it.
Mr. Gresh, you'd like to respond?
I think the key point here is that it's just taken too long, Chief. When this was passed in 1986, we thought that you'd get down to the business of making a resolution of this situation. But it became 1987, 88, 89, 90. Can anyone tell me and look me in the face and say, the reason that we're here today is because of the normal flow of events? Or was it, or did we delay and delay because we wanted to get by the last political season? I think the answer is we wanted to get by the last political season. Now let's be serious here. Let's not act like we're working every day for the average Joe out there. I know that you've been working, but the decisions that have been made have simply taken too long. Your own experts are saying that you can reduce the rates with the buyout. Why couldn't we have done it 3 or 4 years ago? And the reason for much of the cost of the buyout that is presently on the table is because of the accrued costs of delay. So when we're looking at a buyout now, we're looking at $300 million of costs that have been simply because Grand Gulf's, the decision on the buyout has been delayed. And that's what we're saying. Let's get it together. If we can reduce rates through a buyout, which I think we can, which your experts think we can, then let's do it.
I have another question. Is it a question, Councilman Singleton, to Mr. Gresh? No. There are no further questions. Thank you.
Madam.
Okay. We have 20. You want to say something? Mr. Artman?
If I could just offer a comment or two on just Mr. Gresh's last statement, and that was, why didn't we do this 3-4 years ago as far as buyout is concerned from his perspective? I just need to offer 3 comments that the public needs to keep in mind. The council goes back on buyout several years. It assembled a team of nationally recognized experts to study this problem, and it's a very, very complex problem in terms of a major city taking over a utility under this unique franchise that the city has. That study resulted in the strategic plan in October 1987, which was presented to the council. Segments of the community were of the opinion that a contested buyout, that is, not a friendly one, one that NOPSI would predictably litigate and contest, presented great risks. Among those risks was the fact that NOPSI predictably would tie up a buyout in court for a number of years. It was NOPSI's position that that litigation could last 6 years or more. If the council had gone ahead, say in early 1988, on a contested buyout path, we still wouldn't have resolved that litigation, assuming that forecast was correct. We still wouldn't have ownership of the system. We'd only be 2 years into a litigation, a very costly litigation that would have perhaps 4 more years to run. Second point I need to say is that we didn't know what the outcome would be as to the Grand Gulf allocation really until last summer. We had contested the 17% share. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit, Justice Bork, had agreed, Judge Bork, and sent it back to the FERC for reconsideration. The FERC issued its order renewing its prior allocation in 1988, and that was appealed and was decided by the court, the same District of Columbia U.S. Court, a year ago, last May and August. So before that point, it may have been premature to move ahead with a contested buyout. If the result of that litigation had been to reduce NOPSI's share of Grand Gulf from 17% to 8%, the whole economics of buyout would change, and we needed to know what the outcome of that litigation would be in the first instance. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Councilman Singleton.
Maybe I can say what I want to say because I don't want to get it mixed in with.
Go right ahead, Councilman.
You know, it's very hard, I guess, to sit here and not say something, but I made a mistake a couple of times before and made a statement when Mr. Gresh was up, and I don't intend to do that again, but it's very hard to sit here and take the fact when somebody that is not an elected official can imply that they are the ones that represent the people of this community. Oh, they all gonna leave now. I'll wait and do it when we close. I'll wait until we close.
Okay, any other observations before we go to speakers? We have at least 25 cards, and the chair will allocate 3 minutes to each person addressing the council.